If you ever see a woman smiling outside your motel window after midnight, do not scream, do not open the curtains, and do not ask who she is. Start talking before she reaches 3. I know that sounds insane. I know it sounds like one of those roadside stories people tell to make old places feel more interesting than they are. I would have thought the same thing before Hollow Pines. Before Room 7. Before I learned that by the time she says 2, she already knows what your voice sounds like. My name is Daniel Carter. I am 34 years old, and until last October, I did not believe in curses, haunted motels, or rules written on laminated paper beside a stained coffee maker. I believed in miles, receipts, claim numbers, photographs, and signatures. I worked as a traveling insurance adjuster, which sounds more official than it feels. Most days, it meant driving hundreds of miles through small towns, taking pictures of storm-damaged roofs, cracked foundations, flooded basements, burned-out garages, and cars sitting crooked in ditches while people watched me like I personally decided how much their bad luck was worth. That week, I had been working claims across rural Missouri after 3 days of heavy rain. Every road looked the same after dark: blacktop, cornfields, mailbox reflectors, and the occasional gas station glowing like a lifeboat in the middle of nowhere. By the time I saw the sign for Hollow Pines Motel, I had been awake for almost 20 hours. My shirt was damp from running between houses in the rain, my boots were muddy, my phone had 1 bar of service, and the check engine light in my company SUV had been blinking for the last 30 miles. I kept telling myself I could make it to the next real town, the kind with a chain hotel and a lobby that smelled like chlorine and waffles. Then the rain came down harder, the highway disappeared under sheets of water, and my engine coughed in a way that made my hands tighten around the steering wheel. The Hollow Pine sign buzzed on the right side of the road, half hidden behind wet pine trees. Vacancy blinked in red neon. Under it, a smaller sign said Color TV, weekly rates, free coffee. It looked like every old roadside motel I had ever passed without thinking. 1 floor, peeling white doors, cracked parking lot, ice machine under a flickering light, curtains pulled tight in every window. I almost kept driving. I really did. But the SUV coughed again, and the dashboard clock read 11:38 p.m. So I pulled in. The office smelled like burnt coffee, floor cleaner, and damp carpet. An old woman sat behind the front desk under a yellow lamp, watching a small security monitor with 4 grainy camera feeds. She had silver hair pinned back tight, pale skin, and the kind of tired eyes that made her look like she had not been surprised by anything in years. Her name tag said Ruth Bell. She looked up at me, then past me, through the rain-streaked glass door toward the parking lot. "Just you?" she asked. I said yes. Her shoulders relaxed, but not enough. I asked for a room, 1 night, cheapest available. She slid a registration card across the counter and told me room 7 was open. While I filled it out, I heard a soft tapping from somewhere behind her. 3 little taps. Ruth did not turn around. She only reached under the counter and placed a small laminated card beside my key. I thought it was the Wi-Fi password. It was not. The first line read, "After midnight, keep the curtains closed." I looked up, half smiling, ready to ask if this was some kind of local joke. Ruth was not smiling. She leaned forward and said, "If she starts counting, do not let the room go quiet." For a second, I thought I had misread the card or misheard Ruth. My brain was too tired to process anything that sounded like a warning from a campfire story, so I gave a small, polite laugh, the kind you use when you do not know whether someone is joking. Ruth did not laugh with me. She only slid the room key closer across the counter. It was attached to a plastic diamond-shaped tag with the number 7 printed in faded black. The tag was scratched up, like dozens of nervous thumbs had rubbed the same spot over the years. I looked back down at the laminated card. There were 6 rules printed in plain black letters. After midnight, keep the curtains closed. If someone taps on the window, do not look. First, speak first. If she starts counting, interrupt her before 3. Do not say your real name. Do not let her see your reflection. If the front desk calls, answer before the second ring. I remember thinking the rules were too specific to be funny. That was what bothered me. A normal motel prank would have been goofy, maybe something about ghosts in the ice machine or a haunted room. This felt practical, almost bored, like instructions for a fire alarm or a broken water heater. I tapped the card with 1 finger and asked Ruth if this was something guests were actually expected to follow. She glanced at the security monitor again. The 4 camera feeds showed the parking lot, the office door, the soda machine, and the row of motel rooms under the ring. Every window was dark except one. Mine, I guessed, though I had not been there yet. The room light was already on. Ruth reached over and turned the monitors slightly away from me. "Just read them before you sleep," she said. I told her I had been driving since dawn and did not plan on doing anything except passing out. "That is when people make mistakes," she said. I almost asked what kind of mistakes, but the lights flickered overhead, and somewhere outside, the ice machine kicked on with a grinding noise that made me flinch. Ruth looked toward the glass door again. Not afraid exactly. Alert, like a woman listening for a sound she had learned to hate. I signed the registration card as Daniel Carter, because that was my name and because I had not yet understood why Rule 4 existed. Ruth's eyes dropped to the card the moment I wrote it. Her mouth tightened. "You should have used an initial," she said quietly. I stared at her. "For the registry? For anything after midnight." It was 11:44 p.m. I checked my watch because I suddenly needed the numbers to be normal. 16 minutes until midnight. I told myself this was local superstition. Every rural place had one. A bridge you did not cross after dark. A road where you did not pick up hitchhikers. A cemetery where you held your breath while passing. People built stories around empty spaces because empty spaces made them nervous. That was all. Ruth placed a second item on the counter, an old black phone receiver, not connected to any cord, wrapped in a rubber band around another folded sheet of paper. "Take this with you," she said. I looked at it, then back at her. "I have a cell phone." She shook her head. "Not for her. For me. If the room phone rings, answer it before the second ring. If it does not ring and you hear me anyway, do not answer." I was too tired for this. That is the honest truth. I had rainwater in my socks, a headache behind my eyes, and the kind of exhaustion that makes everything feel slightly unreal. So instead of arguing, I took the key, the card, and the useless receiver, and I thanked her because politeness is a reflex even when fear is starting to crawl under it. Room 7 was halfway down the row, between room 6 with a cracked flower pot outside and room 8 with a drawn curtain that glowed faintly blue from a television. The parking lot was almost empty. My SUV sat near the office, ticking softly as the engine cooled. Rain blew sideways under the awning, cold against my face and hands. The motel doors were all painted the same dull red, each with brass numbers tarnished by weather. As I walked, I had the uncomfortable feeling that every curtain moved just before I looked at it. Not opening. Not enough to prove anything. Just a faint shift of fabric behind glass, like people were stepping back from windows. The key stuck in the lock at first. I had to jiggle it twice before the door opened. Room 7 smelled like old carpet, bleach, and the ghost of cigarettes from 20 years ago. There was a queen bed with a floral comforter, a small table, a lamp with a crooked shade, a humming mini fridge, a television mounted on the wall, and a bathroom with a sink outside the door. The curtains were heavy brown fabric, already closed. A wall unit air conditioner rattled beneath the window. On the nightstand sat an old beige motel phone. Beside it was another copy of the rules, taped flat to the table under clear packing tape. That was when my stomach tightened. One warning at the desk was strange. 2 warnings, one of them taped down like people kept trying to remove it, felt different. I set my bag on the bed and checked the window. The curtains were fully shut, but there was a tiny gap where the fabric did not meet in the middle. Through it, I could see a thin slice of parking lot, rain shining in the motel lights, and the dark line of pine trees beyond the road. Nothing else. I told myself to stop. I was acting like a kid who had watched a scary movie alone. I pulled the curtains tighter, then dragged the little table in front of them because it made me feel better and because no one was there to see how stupid that looked. I took off my wet jacket, changed into a dry shirt from my bag, and ate a pack of peanut butter crackers from the vending machine. The room clock said 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the rules on the nightstand. My phone had no service now. Not one bar. I held it up near the window before remembering the first rule and lowering my hand. The air conditioner rattled. The rain tapped at the glass. The old room phone sat silent. At 12 a.m., nothing happened. I actually smiled. The clock clicked to 12:01. Still nothing. By 12:03, my heart had slowed enough for me to feel embarrassed. Then 3 soft taps came from the window. Not hard. Not urgent. Polite. Tap. 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 I stopped breathing. The taps came again, a little lower this time, as if whoever stood outside had bent down to find the gap in the curtains. I stared at the brown fabric and felt every rule on that card line up in my mind. If someone taps on the window, do not look first. Speak first. My throat had gone dry. I opened my mouth, but for a second no sound came out. The room seemed to lean toward the silence. The air conditioner stopped rattling. The rain softened. Even the mini fridge clicked off. Then, from the other side of the curtain, a woman whispered one single word with a smile in her voice. 1. I do not know how long I sat there without moving. It could have been 3 seconds or 30. Time inside that room seemed to tighten around the sound of her voice. 1. She had not said it loudly. That was what made it worse. It was gentle, almost patient, like someone counting for a child hiding during a game. My first instinct was to pull the curtain back, because that is what people do when something knocks. You look. You confirm. You make the unknown smaller by giving it a face. But the rule on the nightstand seemed to burn in the corner of my vision. If someone taps on the window, do not look first. Speak first. My mouth opened again, and this time I forced words out before the silence could grow teeth. Room is occupied. It was the first thing that came to mind, stupid and formal, like I was talking to housekeeping through a door. The moment I said it, the air conditioner rattled back to life. Rain struck the glass again. The mini fridge hummed. The room remembered how to sound normal. Behind the curtain, the woman stopped smiling. I know I could not see her. I know the curtains were closed. But I felt the change the way you feel someone staring at you in a dark room. The pressure shifted. The tapping stopped. For several seconds, there was only rain. Then the old motel phone rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The first ring cut through the room, sharp and metallic. I lunged for it before the second ring, knocking the laminated rule card off the table with my elbow. The receiver felt cold against my ear. Ruth's voice came through low and steady. What did you say? I swallowed. What? What did you say to interrupt her? I looked at the curtain. Nothing moved behind it. I said, room is occupied. Ruth was silent long enough that I thought the line had gone dead. Then she exhaled slowly. Good. She heard your voice, but not your name. My hands were shaking so badly the phone cord tapped against the nightstand. I wanted to ask who she was, what she was, why this was happening, why any motel would rent a room if something stood outside counting at the windows. Instead, all that came out was, is someone out there? Ruth answered immediately. Do not ask questions that make you picture her. That sentence shut me up faster than a scream would have. The rain thickened against the glass. I stared at the curtains and tried very hard not to imagine anything behind them. Ruth continued, keep talking if she starts again. Say anything. Weather. Sports. The alphabet. A recipe. It does not matter. Do not let the room go quiet once she gets interested. Interested, I repeated before I could stop myself. The word tasted wrong. The phone line crackled. In the background of Ruth's end, I heard the faint buzz of the office light and something else, a slow tapping that did not match the rain. She is still at your window, Ruth said. My throat tightened. How do you know? Because she is not at mine. I turned cold all over. There was another sound then, very soft, almost hidden under the rain. A fingernail dragging once across the outside of the glass. Not a scratch, not violent, just a slow line, as if she was tracing where the curtain met the frame. Ruth spoke again, more urgently now. Listen to me. Do not look at the window. Do not look at the television if the screen goes black. Do not go into the bathroom unless you keep your eyes down. Anything that reflects you can become a window once she has heard you. I looked toward the television mounted on the wall. It was off, a dark rectangle reflecting the bed, the lamp, and the vague shape of me sitting hunched beside the phone. I looked away so fast my neck hurt. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to tell myself this was still explainable. Ruth could be part of some elaborate scam. Someone could be outside with a speaker. The motel could be full of hidden cameras. But none of that explained why the room had gone silent before the woman spoke, or why my own reflection in the television had seemed half a second late when I moved. I asked Ruth what I was supposed to do until morning. Stay awake, she said. Keep the curtains closed. If the phone rings, answer. If you hear my voice without the phone ringing, ignore it. And Daniel? She paused. Yes? Do not use your full name again tonight. You wrote it down already. That is bad enough. The line clicked before I could respond. I sat there holding the dead receiver to my ear, listening to the dial tone hum like an insect. The room felt smaller now. Every surface seemed polished enough to betray me. The television screen, the dark window gap, the cheap framed print over the bed, the metal trim around the air conditioner, even the black face of my phone lying on the comforter. I turned my phone face down. Then, because panic makes you obey rituals quickly, I draped my wet jacket over the television and pulled the framed print off the wall, setting it face down on the carpet. I avoided the mirror above the sink by keeping my eyes on the floor. I did everything the rules suggested, and still I felt watched. Around 12:19 a.m., the tapping returned. This time it came from higher on the glass, though the window was at ground level and there was nothing outside to stand on except a narrow strip of wet concrete. 3 taps. Tap, tap, tap. I started talking before she could speak. I talked about the weather first. I said the rain was heavy, the highway was flooded, and the shoulders were probably mud by now. My voice sounded thin and ridiculous in the empty room, but I kept going. I talked about the gas station I had passed 20 miles back, about the burnt coffee in the office, about how I had once driven across Kansas in August with no air conditioning. I said anything I could think of. The tapping stopped, but the pressure at the window remained. Then a woman laughed softly behind the curtain. Not loud, not mocking, almost pleased. The motel phone rang again. I grabbed it before the second ring. Ruth did not speak at first. Instead, I heard my own voice on the line, recorded or copied or remembered, saying room is occupied in the exact flat panic I had used minutes earlier. Then Ruth cut in, breathing hard. She repeated you. That means she is learning the shape of you. My stomach dropped. What happens if she learns it? Another pause. Outside the window, something brushed the curtain from the wrong side. Ruth said, then she will not need you to open anything. The line went dead again. I stood up too fast, dizzy from fear and exhaustion, and backed toward the bathroom without thinking. I only wanted water. I only wanted to splash my face and prove I still had a body that obeyed normal rules. My foot crossed the bathroom tile before I remembered what Ruth had said. Keep your eyes down. I froze. The sink was directly in front of me. Above it was the mirror. I stared at my boots on the tile, breathing through my teeth. I told myself I could reach the faucet without looking up. I took one step. Then the bathroom light flickered, and in the mirror above me, though I was not looking directly at it, I saw the reflection of a window that did not exist behind my shoulder. Brown curtains, rain on glass, and pressed close to the other side, a smiling woman raising 2 fingers. The moment I saw those 2 fingers in the mirror, my whole body forgot how to move. I was not looking at her directly. That was what I told myself first, because fear will argue technicalities when it has nothing else left. I was looking at the sink. I was looking at the floor. I only saw the mirror by accident, at the edge of my vision. But the rule had not said anything about intent. Do not let her see your reflection. The woman in the impossible window behind me smiled wider, and though I still could not see her face clearly, I saw enough to understand that the smile was not there to comfort anyone. It was there because she had been noticed. 2. She whispered, and the word did not come from the bathroom. It came from the drain in the sink, from the dark screen of my phone on the bed, from the television under my wet jacket, from the rain ticking against the real window in the other room. I stumbled backward out of the bathroom and hit the wall hard enough to knock the framed print fully off the carpet where I had placed it face down. The glass caught a flash of lamplight, and for one terrible second I saw her smile again in the broken reflection of the frame. I looked away so fast my eyes watered. My hands were shaking uncontrollably now. I kept whispering no, 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 not as an answer, not to her, just to keep my own voice moving through the room, because Ruth had said not to let it go quiet. The motel phone rang. I lunged for it before the second ring, nearly tripping over my bag. Ruth's voice came through before I could speak. Tell me you did not look. I could not answer right away. Daniel, she said, sharper now. Tell me. I saw her in the mirror, I said. I did not mean to. I heard Ruth inhale, and that small sound scared me more than if she had cursed. Did she show you 1 finger or 2? 2. The line crackled. From somewhere outside, the tapping returned, but not at the window anymore. It tapped against the bathroom mirror. 3 soft taps from inside the wall. Ruth spoke quickly. Listen carefully. You have not lost yet. 2 means she has your voice and a way to recognize your shape. She still does not have your name from your mouth after midnight, and she has not been invited inside. Do you understand? I wanted to say yes, but the word caught. Instead, I started describing the room because any words felt safer than silence. The bed is by the wall. The lamp is on. The curtains are closed. The carpet is green. The carpet was not green. I stopped. My stomach twisted. The carpet had been brown when I came in. Old brown motel carpet with darker stains near the doorway. Now, in the dim yellow light, it looked green. Not bright green. A faded, sickly green, like the floor in a room from a different decade. Ruth must have heard me stop breathing. What changed? She asked. The carpet, I whispered. Ruth went silent. Then she said, do not trust the room after 2. She can change the parts of it you are not looking at. My mouth went dry. I turned slowly, keeping my eyes away from the bathroom mirror, away from the television, away from the window. The room was still room 7, but small things had shifted. The comforter pattern was different. The lampshade had a tear I did not remember. The vending machine crackers on the table were gone, replaced by a white ceramic coffee cup with lipstick on the rim. I had not put it there. The laminated rules were still taped to the nightstand, but the 4th rule looked darker now, as if the ink had been freshly printed. Do not let her see your reflection. I heard a soft laugh behind the curtains. Ruth said, Daniel, say something. Anything. I started talking again. I recited the names of highways I had driven that week. Interstate 44. Route 63. County Road 12. I described hail damage, roof shingles, flooded basements, the smell of wet drywall, every boring detail I could drag out of my memory. My voice shook, but it filled the room. The tapping slowed. For a moment, I thought it was working. Then the woman outside spoke in my voice. Interstate 44, she said, mimicking my exact rhythm. Route 63. County Road 12. Ruth heard it through the phone. I know she did, because she whispered, oh, Daniel. I gripped the receiver so hard my fingers hurt. What do I do? You come to the office, she said. Now, keep your eyes down. Bring the loose receiver I gave you. Do not open the curtains. Do not use the bathroom mirror. Do not look at car windows. Do not let her ask you a question. A question? If she asks who is inside, do not answer. The next tap came from the motel room door. Not the window. The door. My knees nearly gave out. Ruth's voice went low. Is she at the door? I stared at the bottom of it. Rainwater had begun to seep under the threshold, though the door opened onto a covered walkway. In the thin puddle, I saw a reflection of bare feet standing outside. Not facing the room. Facing away from it, heels toward the door, as if whoever stood there was looking out at the parking lot while waiting for me to open up behind her. I did not answer Ruth. I could not make myself speak. The woman knocked once. Then she said, in Ruth's voice, front desk. Open up. Ruth said through the phone, that is not me. The doorknob turned a 1/4 inch and stopped against the lock. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. The woman outside laughed softly, and the sound slid back into my own voice halfway through. I backed toward the table, grabbed my keys, the laminated card, and the disconnected receiver Ruth had given me. The door to room 7 had a peephole. I did not look through it. I kept my eyes on the carpet, unlocked the chain with one hand, and waited until the footsteps outside moved away. They were slow, wet, and backwards, heel first, toe last. When the sound faded toward the ice machine, I opened the door just wide enough to slip out. Rain blew into my face. The parking lot was washed silver under the lights. Every motel window reflected me in fragments. Dark glass, car mirrors, chrome trim, puddles on the asphalt. I lowered my head and started walking toward the office, talking the whole way under my breath. The weather is bad. The road is flooded. My engine light is on. My name is not for you. My name is not for you. Halfway across the parking lot, every car alarm chirped once in perfect unison. I froze. In the passenger side mirror of my SUV, despite my eyes being fixed on the ground, I saw the smiling woman standing behind me. She was closer now. Her smile showed no teeth. One hand was raised with 2 fingers extended. With the other, she tapped gently on the glass of my reflection. I did not run. Running would have meant looking up, and looking up meant catching myself in every wet surface between room 7 and the office. So I moved the way you move through a dark room when you know something sharp is on the floor, slow and careful and shaking all over. My eyes stayed locked on the cracked asphalt 3 feet ahead of my boots. Rainwater crawled through the parking lot in thin streams, carrying pine needles, cigarette butts, and little strips of torn paper from the trash can near the ice machine. Every puddle felt like a trap. Every car window felt awake. Behind me, the woman tapped once more on the mirror of my SUV, except the sound came from all the cars at once, a soft, polite tap against glass in every direction. I started talking again because silence felt like a hand closing around my throat. The sky is cloudy. The rain is cold. The office is 20 yards away. The office light is yellow. My engine is bad. My boots are wet. My voice came out thin and broken, but it was still my voice, and for the moment that mattered. Halfway to the office, the disconnected phone receiver Ruth had given me crackled in my hand. There was no cord, no battery, nothing that should have made sound. Static poured through the earpiece anyway, dry and insect-like. Then Ruth's voice whispered from it, "Do not stop walking." I almost answered. My mouth actually opened. Then I remembered what she had said at the desk. If the room phone rings, answer it before the second ring. If it does not ring and you hear me anyway, do not answer. This receiver had not rung. It could not ring. So I bit down on my own tongue and kept moving. The office door was ahead of me, its glass pane glowing under the sign that said manager. Through the rain-streaked glass, I saw Ruth standing behind the counter, motioning for me to hurry. Relief hit me so hard my knees weakened. Then I saw the security monitor behind her. For tiny camera feeds. Parking lot. Office door. Soda machine. Room 7. In the feed showing the office door, I saw myself standing outside in the rain. Behind me, just over my shoulder, the smiling woman stood close enough that her face should have been reflected in the glass. I did not turn. I did not look at the door glass. I stared at the rusted threshold and reached for the handle. The door was locked. My heart lurched. Ruth's real voice came from inside, muffled but urgent. "Say something. Do not let her ask first." I started reciting state capitals. Alabama, Montgomery. Alaska, Juneau. Arizona, Phoenix. I could barely remember the order, but that did not matter. Words mattered. Noise mattered. I kept going while Ruth fumbled with the lock from the other side. Behind me, the woman spoke in my voice, soft and curious. "Who is inside?" My hand froze on the door handle. The question was not loud, but the whole motel seemed to lean toward it. Rain softened. The neon stopped buzzing. Somewhere, an ice machine went silent mid-cycle. "Who is inside?" She asked again, this time in the voice of a little girl I had never heard before. Ruth threw the door open and grabbed my jacket, pulling me inside so hard I nearly fell over the counter. She slammed the door shut behind me and locked it with 3 separate bolts. The office lights flickered. The security monitor went black. Ruth put one finger against her lips, and I nodded, breathing so fast I thought I might pass out. She looked older than she had 20 minutes earlier. Her silver hair had come loose around her face, and her eyes were wet, not with tears exactly, but with the strain of listening too hard for too many years. "You looked at her reflection," she said. I did not mean to. That does not matter to her. I swallowed. She asked who was inside. Ruth closed her eyes for a second. Then she reached beneath the counter and pulled out an old guest registry, the kind with a cracked leather cover and yellowed pages. She opened it near the back. The handwriting inside went back decades, names and dates stacked in careful lines. Some names had been crossed out so thoroughly they were only dark bars. Others had a small word written beside them. Counted, heard, reflected, answered. Ruth turned to a blank page and pointed to the bottom line. "If she gets your name from your mouth after midnight, it appears here before sunrise." I looked at the page, and my stomach twisted. Faint gray letters had already begun to form there, not fully written yet, just the ghost of ink pressing upward through the paper. See, Ruth saw it too. She shut the book quickly. "You are at 2, she said. 1 means she heard you. 2 means she saw enough of you to find the shape. 3 means she knows who is inside. And if she knows that..." Ruth looked toward the windows behind the office desk. The blinds were closed, but every slat trembled as if someone outside was breathing against them. "Then she does not need this motel to reach you anymore." I backed away from the counter. "What is she?" Ruth did not answer right away. She picked up the coffee pot, poured the burnt coffee into the sink, then stood there holding the empty pot like she had forgotten why she touched it. "Her name was Clara Vane," she said finally. "At least, that is the name she used when she checked in. 1989. Room 3. Paid cash. No luggage except a white handbag and a little silver compact mirror." The next night, Guests started calling the desk, saying a woman was knocking at their windows and asking who was inside. Most thought she was drunk. Some yelled at her. Some opened the curtains. Some gave their names, because people do that when they think they are in charge. Ruth's voice grew flatter as she spoke, like she was reading from memory instead of telling a story. By morning, Clara was gone. Room 3 was locked from the inside. The bed had not been slept in. Every window in the motel had the number 3 written on the inside of the glass in condensation, even rooms that had been empty. I stared at her, waiting for the part where this became a police report, a missing person case, anything human. Ruth opened the registry again, this time to a page from 1989. There were 12 names listed under that date, all crossed out. At the top was Clara Vane. Not crossed out. Circled. The sheriff came, she said. The owner lied. Guests checked out and forgot details before they reached the county line. A few remembered enough to call back later. By then, she had already found their windows. My throat went dry. Their windows where? Ruth looked at me. Home. Cars. Hotels. Hospital rooms. Anywhere glass can become a boundary. The office phone rang once. Both of us flinched. Ruth did not pick it up. It rang a second time. I looked at her. The rule said answer before the second ring. Her face went pale. That rule is for your room, she whispered. The phone rang a third time, and the sound changed. It became wet and close, like someone tapping the inside of my ear. Ruth reached for the cord and yanked it from the wall. The ringing stopped. Outside the office blinds, the woman laughed in Ruth's voice. Daniel, Ruth said, not looking away from the window. We have to get you back to room 7 before she finishes learning you. Are you insane? That is where she is. No, Ruth said. That is where the rules still hold. She took a key from a hook behind the counter. It was not my room 7 key. The tag said 3. I thought of the circled name in the registry and the impossible window in the bathroom mirror. Ruth placed the key in my palm and closed my fingers around it. If she asks who is inside, you do not give her your name. Then whose name do I give her? Ruth's expression broke for the first time, just for a second, and I saw fear underneath all that practiced calm. A name that cannot leave, she said. Ruth kept her hand over mine for a moment after she gave me the room 3 key, like she was afraid I might drop it, or throw it back at her, or run straight into the rain and give Clara exactly what she wanted. A name that cannot leave. I repeated the words in my head, but they did not become clearer. I was soaked, exhausted, and so scared that every light in the office seemed too bright and every shadow seemed too deep. Outside, the blinds behind the front desk trembled again. Not from wind. From something tapping the glass very softly, moving from slat to slat, patient enough to wait for fear to do half the work. I asked Ruth whose name I was supposed to give. She looked toward the old registry and did not answer right away. The pages lay open under the desk lamp, yellow and swollen from years of damp air. The ink faded in some places and too dark in others. Clara Vane's name sat circled on the 1989 page like a stain that had never dried. Ruth touched the edge of the paper with 2 fingers. Clara is the name she used, she said, but I do not think it was hers. Then why does it matter? Because the motel accepted it. Ruth said that in the same quiet way someone might say a lock accepted a key. The rain struck harder against the office windows. She came here with no luggage except a purse and a compact mirror. Paid cash. Asked for room 3. She smiled the whole time, even when nobody was talking to her. I was 29 then, new on the night shift. I thought she was just strange. Lots of people who stop at motels after midnight are strange. I wanted to interrupt, to tell Ruth we did not have time for a history lesson, while something outside was learning how to wear my voice, but I could not make myself speak. The way she told it made the office feel less like shelter and more like the last dry place on a sinking road. Ruth turned another page in the registry. The next sheet was filled with photocopied newspaper clippings tucked between the lines. Missing tourist. Unexplained highway disappearance. Family reports hearing loved one outside window. No connection found. The headlines were old, local, forgettable. The kind people read once over coffee and never think about again. Ruth pointed to the margins, where someone had written times besides several names. 12:11, 12:43, 1:08, 2:16. Always after midnight. Always before sunrise. It was not the room she wanted, Ruth said. It was the answer. I frowned. What answer? Who is inside? The moment Ruth said it, every window in the office gave one tiny tap. She stopped breathing. I realized too late that even repeating the question felt dangerous. The front desk lamp flickered twice. Ruth lowered her voice until I had to lean closer to hear. That question is the third count. 1 means you heard her. 2 means she saw enough of you to find your shape. 3 is not just a number. 3 is when you tell her who she is allowed to become. My skin tightened. I thought about the gray initials forming in the registry. DC. I thought about her voice repeating my highway names, my rhythm, my panic. So if I say my name, she becomes me? Not becomes you exactly, Ruth said. She gets a doorway built from you. Your voice, your habits, the people who trust you when you call. Your windows, your mirrors, anywhere you would be allowed to be seen. I looked toward the dark office phone Ruth had unplugged. The cord lay curled on the floor like a dead snake. She could call my family? Ruth's face changed, not with pity, but with recognition. She can call anyone who would answer you. My stomach went cold. I had no wife, no kids, but I had parents in St. Louis who still picked up when I called, even if I pretended to be too busy most weeks. I had a younger sister in Kansas City who would open the door if she heard my voice outside. I had coworkers who would laugh and say I sounded terrible and ask what motel I had ended up in this time. Suddenly, this was not about one bad night in one bad room. It was about every person in my life who had ever trusted the sound of me. Ruth seemed to read that understanding on my face. That is why you cannot run it too. If you leave before the third count is resolved, you take the open part with you. She follows the part of you she has learned. Then what happens in room 3? I asked. Ruth reached under the counter and pulled out a small metal cash box. The lock was broken, the lid held shut by rubber bands. Inside were old motel items. Keys, receipts, Polaroids faded almost blank, and several laminated rule cards covered in different handwriting. She took out a photograph and handed it to me without letting go right away. It showed room 3 sometime in the late 80s or early 90s. Same red door, same cracked walkway, same pine trees beyond the parking lot. A woman stood in the window reflection, but the actual window was empty. Her face was blurred by flash glare. Her mouth was the only clear thing, curved into a smile so ordinary it made my stomach turn. On the back someone had written, "Do not give her a living name." Ruth took the photo back. If she reaches the third count, she needs a name. The old rule was to give her Clara's, because Clara Vane was already trapped here. The motel could swallow the count and keep her inside the windows. Then why not do that every time? Ruth looked at the registry again. Because it stopped working as well after people started forgetting who Clara was. Names thin out when nobody alive remembers the person attached to them. She needs something stronger now. The tapping at the blinds moved closer to the office door. 1 tap, pause, 1 tap, pause, like a polite customer waiting to be helped. Ruth's eyes flicked toward it. I understood before she said anything. A living person who cannot leave, I whispered. She did not deny it. No, I said. It came out too loud, and the office lights dimmed. Ruth grabbed my wrist. Keep your voice steady. I pulled away. You brought me here to feed someone to her. I brought you here because she already has 2 pieces of you, Ruth said, and if she gets the third, this motel stops being a boundary. You think she only wants to stand outside room 7? Daniel, she has been practicing for 35 years. Every copied voice, every reflection, every guest who left too soon. She is learning how to knock on windows that are not here. The office suddenly felt airless. Ruth softened her tone. I have kept this place running because empty motels are worse. Empty rooms make no noise. Empty rooms cannot interrupt her. Guests are risk, but guests are also witnesses, voices, names that can push back if they listen. That is why the rules exist. Not to make Hollow Pines safe. To make sure what is outside stays outside. I wanted to hate her. Part of me did. But beneath that hate was the terrible understanding that she was not defending the motel. She was holding a door closed with whatever hands came close enough to help. Another tap sounded, this time from the glass office door. The silhouette outside was not fully visible through the rain, just the outline of a woman standing under the awning. Her head was tilted toward us. Her smile showed through the wet glass like a white scratch. Ruth looked at the clock. 2:37 a.m. We have until dawn, she said. Maybe less. Why room 7 first, then room 3? Because she heard you in room 7, saw you through reflection, and will ask the final question where the count began. But room 3 is where the name can be redirected. She pushed the old receiver into my hand again. When we go back, You keep talking. Do not say your full name. Do not answer questions. Do not look at glass. If the front desk phone calls your room, answer before the second ring. If my voice comes from anywhere else, ignore it. I stared at her. Are you coming with me? Ruth gave a small, tired smile, and for the first time it looked almost human. I have been coming with guests since 1989. Outside, the woman tapped 3 times on the office door. Tap, tap, tap. Then she spoke in my voice, calm and friendly, the way I sounded on work calls. Ruth Bell, she said, who is inside with you? Ruth's face went gray. I saw the trap open in front of her. Not the number 3 yet, but the shape of it. The question wanted a name. Any name. Mine. Hers. A dead woman's. A living one. Ruth pulled me toward the back door of the office before the silence could answer for us. We stepped into the laundry room behind the front desk, where old machines sat in rows under buzzing fluorescent lights. None of them were running, but every round washer door reflected the same smiling woman standing at the office glass behind us. Ruth kept her eyes on the floor and whispered, "Start talking, Daniel." So I did. I talked about rain gauges and claim forms, cracked shingles and mileage logs, gas station coffee and wet socks. I talked because every word was a sandbag against a flood. And as Ruth unlocked the rear door that would lead us back into the motel walkway, the disconnected receiver in my hand whispered in a voice that was almost mine, but not quite, 2.5. The receiver whispering 2.5 nearly made me drop it. Ruth slapped her hand over mine before it could hit the laundry room floor, her fingers cold and tight around my wrist. "Do not let go of that," she whispered. "Why?" "Because it is still connected to the desk." I stared at the dead plastic receiver in my hand, the one with no cord, no battery, no reason to speak. "To what desk?" Ruth looked toward the washer doors without raising her eyes. "The one that was here before the motel was." I wanted to ask what that meant, but outside the rear door, something dragged one fingernail slowly down the glass pane. There was no glass pane in the rear door. It was solid metal. I kept talking because stopping felt like stepping off a roof. I talked about county maps, deductible forms, oil changes, motel coffee, anything ordinary enough to keep my mind from shaping her face. Ruth unlocked the rear door with the room 3 key. The moment the lock turned, the fluorescent lights above the washers blinked out. In the round black glass of every machine, I saw the same smile appear behind us. Not the full woman, just the smile, hovering where a face should have been. Ruth shoved the door open, and rain rushed in like the night had been waiting with its mouth against the seam. We stepped onto the covered walkway behind the office, but it no longer looked like the same motel. The red doors were there. The cracked concrete was there. The pine trees swayed beyond the parking lot. But the building felt longer, stretched wrong in both directions, every room number blurred by rain until I could not tell whether they said 6, 7, 3, or nothing at all. Ruth walked ahead of me, one hand on the wall, eyes fixed on the concrete. "Keep your eyes low," she said. "If you see her in a window, she sees you seeing her." I followed her boots. That became my whole world for the next several yards. Ruth's black shoes splashing through shallow puddles. My muddy boots behind hers. Rainwater running along the edge of the walkway. The detached receiver crackling in my palm. From the rooms on our right came soft sounds that did not belong together. A child humming. A man laughing at a television with no picture. Someone brushing their teeth. A woman counting under her breath, but never finishing the number. I kept talking over all of it. The claim number starts with MO. The odometer read 87,000 miles. The roof had missing shingles on the north side. I have never liked black coffee. I do not know why I said that last one. Maybe because the office still smelled like Ruth's burnt pot. Maybe because my brain was running out of safe things to give away. The receiver clicked. A voice that sounded almost like me whispered, "You like it with cream." I stopped for half a step. Ruth turned sharply without looking up. "Daniel, talk." I started again, louder. "I like gas station coffee because it tastes like nothing. I like driving before sunrise. I hate driving in rain. I hate this motel." That made Ruth give one dry, breathless laugh. And for 1 second, she was just an old woman in a storm walking beside a terrified guest. Then room 3 appeared ahead of us. I know that sounds impossible because room 3 should have been near the office, not past room 7. But there it was. Red door, brass number, window curtain drawn tight, a small porch light flickering above it. The key in Ruth's hand trembled. This is where she first asked, Ruth said. Who answered? I asked. Ruth did not move. I did. I was young. I had just started nights. The owner was asleep in the back. Clara knocked on room 3 from the inside. I thought she had locked herself out somehow. I came to the window and asked if she needed help. Ruth's voice thinned until I could barely hear it over the rain. She smiled at me through the glass and said one. I felt the shape of the story shift under my feet. You were the first? Ruth nodded once. I gave her rules after that because rules were all I had. I watched what stopped her and what did not. I wrote everything down. Guests think rules come from people who understand. Most of the time, they come from people who survived one mistake and spent the rest of their lives trying to make that mistake useful. The porch light above room 3 went out. In the darkness, the window beside the door reflected the walkway. Ruth, me, and a third figure standing between us, though there was no one there. I clenched my eyes shut, but not before I saw the smile. Ruth squeezed my arm. We are almost done. The lie was kind, and I hated her for needing to tell it. She unlocked room 3 and pushed the door open. The room inside was not like room 7. It looked older, as if no renovation had touched it since 1989. Green carpet, wood-paneled walls, a tube television, a bedspread with orange flowers, a rotary phone on the nightstand. The air smelled like cold coffee and rain trapped in fabric. Across from the bed was the window. The curtains were closed, but a faint white glow outlined them from outside. Ruth stepped in first and motioned for me to follow. The door closed behind us on its own. I flinched, but Ruth only nodded toward the rotary phone. When it rings, answer. What do I say? Anything except who you are. She crossed to the dresser and opened the top drawer. Inside were stacks of index cards, each covered in handwriting. Not just hers. Different hands. Different years. Some neat. Some barely readable. Rules, warnings, names, fragments of things guests had heard outside their windows. Ruth pulled one card free and handed it to me. It said, if she asks who is inside, give her a name that belongs to the room, not to yourself. Under it, someone had written, Clara Vane belongs to room 3, but room 3 may no longer hold her alone. The window tapped. Once. Ruth closed the drawer. The rotary phone rang before the second tap. I grabbed it before the second ring, nearly ripping it off the nightstand. There was no dial tone, no Ruth, no static, just rain, very close, and then my own voice whispering from the receiver. Who is inside? I clamped my free hand over my mouth. Ruth shook her head quickly. Not yet, she mouthed. Keep talking. I lowered my hand and started, reciting every motel object I could see. Bed, lamp, table, phone, carpet, door, curtain, chair, Bible drawer, peeling wallpaper. Ruth stood near the window, eyes fixed on the floor, lips moving silently like she was counting backward from something only she knew. The tapping came again. 1. This time it was Clara's voice outside the glass. Gentle, patient, almost amused. Ruth whispered, do not let her lead the rhythm. I kept talking faster. Brown chair, orange bedspread, cracked ceiling, old smoke smell, rain, pine trees, bad coffee, wet boots. The curtain bulged inward slightly, though the window was closed. The room went cold. 2, Clara whispered. The rotary receiver grew warm against my ear. My own copied voice came through it again, clearer now. Daniel Carter is inside. I nearly answered no by reflex. Ruth slapped the phone away from my mouth, not hard, just enough to stop the word. Do not correct her with your name, she whispered. Corrections count. My hands shook around the receiver. The curtain slowly parted in the middle, not opening fully, just enough to show the glass. Condensation covered it from edge to edge. On the outside stood the blurred shape of a woman, her smile bright through the fogged window. One finger traced a circle in the moisture. Then another. Then she wrote 2 letters. D. C. Ruth made a sound that was almost a sob. She is too close, I whispered. Ruth nodded. Then give her the room. Before I could ask what that meant, the shape outside leaned closer to the glass. The smile widened, still no teeth, still almost human. The voice that came through the phone was my mother's now, soft with worry. Danny, who is in there with you? My knees weakened. I had not heard her call me Danny in years. Ruth gripped my shoulder. That is not a question for your heart. It is a question for the door. The window tapped a 3rd time, but the number did not come yet. It hovered in the room like a held breath. I looked at the registry card in my hand, at the words "give her a name that belongs to the room," and finally understood what Ruth had been trying not to say. Room 3 did not need a dead name. It needed a keeper. Someone remembered strongly enough to hold the boundary. Ruth stepped toward the window. "No," I whispered. She did not look back. "I opened the first door," she said. "I can close it for one more night." The rotary phone hissed, and Clara's voice, my voice, Ruth's voice, all braided together into one soft question. "Who is inside?" Ruth answered before I could stop her. "Ruth Bell is inside." The room went silent. The smile outside the window finally showed teeth. The moment Ruth said her name, every sound in room 3 disappeared. The rain stopped against the window. The old air conditioner went quiet. The rotary phone in my hand became dead plastic. Even my own breathing seemed to pull back, like the room had taken one long breath and was waiting to see what would happen next. Outside the glass, Clara's smile showed teeth for the first time. They were not sharp. They were not monstrous. That almost made it worse. They looked like ordinary human teeth arranged inside an expression that no human face should have been able to hold for that long. Ruth stood between me and the window, small and straight-backed, her hands relaxed at her sides. I wanted to pull her away. I wanted to say her name back to her, to remind the room she was still real, still standing there, still the woman who had checked me in and warned me and dragged me through the rain before I understood what she was saving me from. But I knew better now. Names mattered. Names opened doors. Names gave shape to whatever waited on the other side of the glass. Clara tapped once. Then again. The third tap came from inside the rotary phone against my ear. A voice whispered, "3 belongs to Ruth Bell." The curtains snapped shut by themselves. Ruth flinched, but she did not step back. The lamp on the nightstand flickered, and for 1 second, the motel room changed around us. The bedspread became new, then old, then stained with years of dust. The wallpaper peeled backward and returned. The television became a black box, then a flat screen, then a blank mirror reflecting only me. I squeezed my eyes shut before I could see who stood behind me in it. Ruth's voice came through the room, not from her mouth, but from the motel phone, the window, the vents, the walls. "Daniel, keep talking." I opened my eyes just enough to see my own shoes on the green carpet. My mouth felt numb. I started with the first thing I could reach. The carpet is green. The lamp is yellow. The room smells like old coffee. The rain is outside. The door is behind me. My boots are wet. My hands are shaking. Ruth said louder. Her actual voice was faint now. I raised my voice. I talked about insurance claims, rental cars, storm reports, gas station sandwiches, anything boring and human. Words spilled out of me in a panic stream. Clara laughed behind the curtain. Then she began counting again, but this time she used voices I knew. 1, said my mother. 2, said my sister. 3, said my own voice from somewhere under the bed. Ruth turned her head slightly, not enough to look at me, just enough for me to hear her. "Do not accept that count. It is not yours." I did not know how to reject a number. I only knew how to keep making sound. So I talked over it. I said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I said red, blue, green, yellow. I said every county I had driven through that week. The room trembled with each word, like speech itself was weight on a weak door. The rotary phone rang in my hand, even though I was still holding the receiver. The ringing came from the base on the nightstand, sharp and metallic. Ruth looked at it. "Answer before the second ring," she whispered. I grabbed the base with my free hand and fumbled the hook switch, pressing it down and releasing it like that could count as answering. The ringing stopped. Ruth's voice came through the receiver, clearer than the Ruth standing by the window. "If I am on this line, I am still holding. If I call from anywhere else, ignore me." I looked at her back. "What does that mean?" The Ruth by the window said, "It means she will wear me next." The curtain bulged inward. Something pressed against the fabric from the window side, not breaking through, just leaning close enough that the outline of a smiling face appeared in the cloth. Ruth lifted one hand and placed it against the curtain. "Do not look at the glass," she said. "Look at the phone." I looked down. The rotary dial had numbers, but the center label, where motel phones usually listed the office extension, had changed. In neat black letters, it said "Front Desk, Ruth Bell." Under it, smaller words appeared as I watched. "Answer before the second ring." My throat tightened. Ruth was not dying in the way people usually mean that word. She was being written into the rule. The motel was taking her name and turning it into part of the boundary. That was the price. Not a body on the floor. Not some dramatic end. Something quieter and worse. Being remembered only as an instruction. The window tapped again, harder this time. Ruth's hand pressed flat to the curtain. Her shoulders shook, but her voice stayed steady. Daniel, when the sun comes up, you leave. You do not sign anything. You do not look back through your rearview mirror until the motel is gone. If the phone in your car rings, you let it ring. My car does not have a phone. It might, after tonight. Clara's voice slid through the curtain, sweet and patient. Ruth Bell is inside. Ruth answered, yes. The curtain began to darken around her hand, as if rainwater were soaking through from the other side. I took one step toward her. She snapped, stay where you are. I froze. She softened immediately. Please, do not make me say your name. That stopped me more completely than any command could have. The room phone rang again. Once. I answered before the second ring. This time the voice on the line was not Ruth. It was Clara, using my voice perfectly. Daniel Carter is inside. I almost said no. The correction rose in me automatically, a reflex stronger than thought. Ruth had warned me. Corrections count. I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek and turned the denial into more words. The room is occupied. The room has a lamp. The room has a chair. The room has a phone. The room has rules. The room has Ruth Bell. The second I said that, the walls shuddered. Ruth bowed her head, and the curtain pulled inward around the shape of her hand. Clara screamed without raising her voice. That is the only way I can explain it. The sound was quiet, but it filled every reflective surface in the room. The black television, the brass doorknob, the rain on the glass, the shine of my own eyes. I kept my gaze on the phone. The rotary dial spun backward by itself. 1, 2, 3. Then all the numbers blurred. Ruth whispered, she has to count someone. Tonight, she counts me. The first gray line of dawn appeared at the bottom of the curtains. Clara's smile vanished from the fabric. The pressure in the room broke all at once. Rain returned. The air conditioner coughed to life. Somewhere outside, a truck passed on the highway, its tires hissing through water. Ruth was still standing by the window, but I could see through her cardigan now, just faintly, as if she were becoming a reflection on dirty glass. She turned, and for the first time all night, she looked directly at me. Her face was tired, sad, and almost relieved. When the next guest checks in, she said, tell them the rules before midnight. I tried to say I was sorry, but she shook her head. Do not waste words on guilt. Use them to interrupt the count. Then the office phone rang somewhere far away, beyond the walls of room 3. Ruth's body faded with the sound, not disappearing all at once, but thinning into the hum of a line being answered. The rotary receiver in my hand warmed. Her voice came through it, calm and practiced, as if she had always been on the other end. Front desk, she said. Are you still there? I could barely speak. Yes. Good, Ruth said. Then do not hang up until sunrise. The world became quiet a few minutes before sunrise. Not peaceful, not safe, just quiet, like the motel had finally run out of ways to pretend it was only a motel. I sat on the edge of the bed in room 3 with the rotary phone pressed to my ear, listening to Ruth breathe on the line, if breathing was still the right word for what she did now. The rain had softened to a mist outside the window. The air conditioner rattled in tired little bursts. The first gray light of morning bled through the curtains, thin and colorless, and for the first time since midnight, nothing tapped on the glass. No woman counted. No voice asked who was inside. No reflection moved half a second late. I thought that meant I had survived. Ruth stayed on the phone until the digital clock beside the bed clicked to 6:01 a.m. Then she said, you can leave the room now. Her voice sounded normal again, dry and calm, the way it had when she handed me the key at the front desk. I almost let myself believe that meant she was standing in the office, that somehow everything I had seen in room 3 had been another trick, another reflection, another piece of fear shaped like sacrifice. But when I opened the door and stepped onto the wet walkway, the office windows were dark. The front desk lamp was off. The parking lot was empty except for my SUV and a white maintenance van I did not remember seeing before. The neon vacancy sign still buzzed, but the red letters looked dim in the dawn. I crossed the parking lot with my eyes on the ground, not because the rules still told me to, but because I did not trust my own need to look back. In the office, the air smelled like cold coffee and floor cleaner. The security monitor was on. Four grainy feeds showed the parking lot, the office door, the soda machine, and room 7. On the room 7 feed, the curtains were closed. On the office door feed, I saw myself standing at the counter, soaked, pale, holding the rotary receiver from room 3 even though I had left it on the bed. I looked down. My hand was empty. I looked back at the monitor. The version of me on the screen slowly lifted the receiver to his ear. The office phone rang once. I did not answer. It rang a second time. My whole body locked. Every rule in my head shouted at once. Answer before the second ring. Do not answer if you hear her voice without the phone ringing. Do not correct her with your name. Do not let the room go quiet. But this was not my room anymore. This was the front desk. Ruth's new rule. I let it ring. On the third ring, the monitor went black. Then Ruth's voice came from the unplugged phone on the counter. Good, she said. You are learning which rules belong where. I backed away from it, shaking so badly I had to grab the counter to stay upright. Ruth? The phone clicked softly. Do not say my name. Unless you need the rule. That was when I saw the registry. It lay open under the desk lamp. The same cracked leather book she had shown me earlier. The 1989 page was different now. Clara Vane was still circled at the top. Below her, the crossed-out names remained, but a new line had been added near the bottom in fresh black ink. Ruth Bell. Beside it, in careful handwriting, was written front desk, active. My throat tightened. I turned the page before I could stop myself. The blank page where my initials had started forming was no longer blank. My full name was not written there. Not fully, but Daniel C. had appeared in pale gray letters, like ink seen through skin. Beside it was a note I had not seen before. Heard. Reflected. Not named. Pending. I could not look away. Pending. It did not mean safe. It meant unfinished. It meant some part of me was still open in the motel's records, a form waiting for one last signature. I closed the registry, but the words stayed in my head like a clock ticking behind a wall. Then I noticed the laminated card on the counter. The rules had changed. There were still the old ones. Keep the curtains closed. Speak before looking. Interrupt before 3. Do not say your real name. Do not let her see your reflection. Answer the room phone before the second ring. But a final line had appeared at the bottom, printed in the same plain black letters as if it had always been there. If the front desk calls after sunrise, answer only if you are willing to stay. I understood then what Ruth had done and what she had not been able to do. She had not destroyed Clara. She had not ended the counting. She had given the motel another voice to hold the boundary. Another person turned into a rule strong enough to keep the smiling woman from taking my name all the way out into the world. The rules were never just instructions for scared guests. They were locks. Every rule was made from someone who had paid for it. Someone heard her and learned to speak first. Someone looked and learned not to use mirrors. Someone answered too late and became the reason for the second ring. Ruth had become the front desk because somebody had. To keep calling before silence, let Clara finish. And I had not escaped clean. I had brought back enough of the count that my name was still pending. Outside, dawn brightened the wet parking lot. The motel looked smaller in daylight, almost pathetic. Peeling paint, sagging gutters, pine needles in the drains. I wanted to get in my SUV and drive until the sun was directly overhead. I wanted to reach a city, a crowd, a hotel with elevators and breakfast, and no curtains heavy enough to hide anything. Instead, the office phone rang. Once. I stared at it. Twice. My hand moved before I decided to move it. I picked up. For a second, there was only static. Then a man's voice, young and scared, whispered, "Front desk?" There is someone tapping on my window. I looked at the security monitor. Room 7 was occupied now. I could see a silhouette inside, a guest sitting on the bed, staring at the curtains exactly the way I had. Outside his window, through the rain-streaked camera feed, a woman stood smiling. My stomach turned. I looked toward the glass office door. My SUV waited in the parking lot with the driver's door facing me, only 30 feet away. I could have left. Maybe. Ruth's voice whispered through the second line, barely audible under the static. Tell him to talk. That was the price. Not being trapped in the motel forever, not exactly. Something worse because it looked like a choice. If I left, the next guest might go quiet. If the next guest went quiet, Clara might get a living name. If she got a living name, the motel would stop being the only window she could use. I closed my eyes and spoke into the phone. Say anything, I told him. Weather, baseball, what you had for dinner, it does not matter. Just do not let her count. The man on the line began to cry softly, but he talked. I stayed with him until the curtains stopped moving. When the call ended, the registry opened by itself behind me. I did not turn around. I already knew what it would say. Daniel C. was darker now. Not complete, but darker. I left Hollow Pines at 7:12 a.m., after the sun had fully cleared the pine trees. I did not look in my rearview mirror until the motel sign disappeared. Behind a curve, when I finally looked, the back seat was empty, but the rear window was fogged from the inside. 3 words were written there in a woman's careful finger. Who is inside? I did not answer. I still do not answer that question. Not in mirrors, not on phones, not when someone knocks after midnight. I used to think the rules at Hollow Pines were written to protect me from the smiling woman outside the glass. I was wrong. They were written to keep her from learning enough of us to leave. So if you ever stay in a roadside motel and the front desk gives you a list of rules, do not laugh. Do not skip a line. If someone taps on your window after midnight, speak before you look. If she starts counting, interrupt her before 3. And if the phone rings after sunrise, think carefully before you answer, because some rules do not save you from the motel. Some rules make you part of it.